Hi everyone, we're back. And I know it's been a while, but the topic for discussion today, this is sessions 67, and it's called the aging process. I know that most of us just look upon the elderly as aging, but if we be realistic, every single person is aging every day. Let's start from the very beginning as the aging process takes place. Here we have, as we can see, the fetal development. Then that fetus becomes an infant. The infant is born. Then that infant goes through childhood. See, there's a lovely birthday party. There's a party going on. Then it goes, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a dad with his little kid, and they're having some fun time fishing. Then it goes from that stage to becoming an adult. Now, I know there are adults of different stages. Some people are older, but they do pretty well. And then we have the elderly who are just barely making it because they have what they call all types of health problems. Not everyone ages the same. Some people age without any health problems, and some people age with health problems. Some people have them from very young, but you can only do the best that you can. Now let's take a look at this situation that we have here. And there is a person who's saying, "Help me, nurse. I'm having difficulty breathing. I cannot breathe." This is not an uncommon situation for an elderly person, as the elderly is more prone to having health problems. They have cardiac problems. Some people have myocardial infarctions. And you can go to some of my other videos where I discuss that in greater detail. Then some people have problems with difficulty breathing. We've heard patients have problems like COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and they're just a variety. And sometimes patients have had a heart attack that obviously affects their breathing, especially if the anterior wall of the heart is involved. So as you get older, believe it or not just believe it or not, it's just an expectation that as people get older, they tend to have more problems with their health. Then we will take a look at how it impacts the immune system. We know that when you're older, your immune system is definitely not as strong as a young, healthy person. Some older people tend to get things like colds and flus more, and in general, they just have a lot more problems coping. So let's take a look at the situations that we have here. We have some of them eating in a restaurant. You go to the salad bars where you don't know how many other people have touched the salads and done this or that. Sometimes hands are not washed properly or so. You sit in communal places like on a bus. Then you also have places like sitting in a coffee shop or in a restaurant, just about any place that you can think of. All of these places have one thing in common: they are communal places. And when you interact in communal places, you obviously are more prone to have infections. You're more prone to, be in touch with more organisms, and that's a natural expectation. But in the average healthy person, the body can handle it. But sometimes in the elderly person, it's a lot more difficult than that. If they get sick, it takes them sometimes a longer time to recover. And there are some elderly people who complain that after they've taken a long flight, they wind up with things like bronchitis or pneumonia, and they have to struggle through it. Again, the impact on the elderly with all these, communal places is just a lot more difficult than if you were. I'm not suggesting that you stay at home all the time. I'm suggesting that the more you interact with people and the public in general is the more prone you are. Anyway, let's go on to how older people tire more quickly. Here we have an incident of someone who is having a test done, and he's just becoming very overwhelming, just tiring very easily. You can see that he's struggling through it. For them, the young, healthy ones looking on, it's fairly easy, but for the elderly person, not that easy. Then we're going to move on to the impact that aging has on the mind. Again, I stress that not everyone is impacted the same. Some people, even at 80 years old, are very capable. They take care of them, manage themselves very well, and they're very sharp. They can still think very coherent. And then you have some people, by the time they're 70, they are just not so coherent, they're just not able, they become forgetful. Here is an elderly person saying, where am I? She doesn't even remember where she is. She's a patient in the hospital, but does not even know where she is. She's just walking around in confusion. And this is not uncommon, especially if you're in an unfamiliar environment. So bear in mind that aging in itself does make it a little bit more difficult. Well, some of the things that we take for granted when we're young, it's not that easy when you get older, remembering things in the order that you have it. In fact, some elderly people even prefer to stay in one place because they can get around a lot easier than if you put them in some place new where they just have a hard time coping. Then we have to bear in mind that also, in addition to that kind of aging, we have things like the impact it has on nutrition. And so we're going to take a look at how the elderly is affected by nutrition. Dehydration is very common in the elderly, and some elderly people, especially when they live alone, they may neglect things like fluids. They tend not to. Some of them even develop things like sepsis because of neglecting their fluids. Again, they're more prone to infections. Another reason for that might be diuretic therapy also, some of the medications they take. Some of them, just like I said, that as you age, you are not, some people are just not as sharp. They forget to take enough fluids. And sometimes the lack of fluids make the joints very stiff. And in general, it's just, nutrition is very important. There's certain minerals and vitamins that you need a lot more as you age, and some people tend not to pay as much attention, especially if they live alone. And so as we get to the very end of this, and I hope that you've learned something from this, I just wanted to point out, I believe this is the last image. I just wanted to make a point of knowing that some elderly people are put in long-term care. That in itself is very disorienting. Sounds easy for the people who go into work and leave, but it isn't for the elderly. Some people just cannot, in that unfamiliar environment, which is not like being in their own homes, get it together. They just struggle through a lot, and they become scared, and some people give up eating and drinking. They get dehydrated. They just cannot cope. They become, it impacts their lives. And again, depending on family dynamics, sometimes they don't have many visitors, which just compounds the problems. So I hope you've learned something from this. Have a great day, and I look forward to serving you again, but I don't know how much longer it will take. I have been fairly busy. Thank you for having the time to do this. Bye.